Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope you're off to a great start today. We're happy to have you. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. You also have access to the F&M Bank chat where people like B French greet us on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and Twitch, saying Buck Rising show is like the Titans defense. Keeps me on the edge of my seat, occasionally yelling at my screen. Correct. That's a pretty good way to describe us. Stuck with that ethos until 1 o'clock, and a lot of different things to cover. We've got roster news for the Titans. We've got Mike Sando of The Athletic in just about 15 minutes from now. We've got the Browns making contract decisions with Deshaun Watson that are truly inexplicable to me, and I have not seen anybody make an intellectually compelling argument for what the hell it is that one of the best rosters in the AFC is doing with a quarterback that seems to be the only thing dragging them down on a week-by-week basis. But we'll have time to get to that. Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan spoke yesterday. If you listen to 3HL, you heard the press conference live. If you didn't catch it, we'll play you some clips. And there's a lot of different things going on. Always emphasize the initial roster continues to be fluid. Think about how much different you felt about your roster on Tuesday than you did on Wednesday, and today probably feeling a little different given that there is yet another trade that the Titans made, trading away Elijah Molden for a 2026 seventh-round pick. Not the biggest haul in the world, but for a guy who they were clearly trying to find ways to get him out of the starting lineup with all the different safeties that they signed, at least you were able to recoup some draft capital for a guy who was in a contract year, so he's out. Weaver also released, Nick Vannett also released two more John Robinson players, though they did express an interest in bringing Weaver back to the practice squad or bringing Weaver back to the roster in some form or fashion, whether that be practice squad or otherwise. Vannett the same. And with everything that they spoke on yesterday, and there was a lot, because they're giving legitimate details in press conferences these days, as you might have noticed, and you get pretty thorough explanations for some of the roster decisions that Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan and their respective staffs went about making over the course of the last 2 days. But I want to start first with this clip from the both of them, where they're both talking about how much widespread change this organization has undergone, and now the process of trying, or I guess the process over several months now since they've been working in off-season team activities and now training camp and now preseason games, ramping up to the regular season. The idea of all this widespread change coming together and forming an actual team. This is Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan both speaking yesterday. Yeah,
anytime you're adding new players, new faces, new people, you're looking at change, and you're looking at relationships that you have to build. And I feel really good about the ones we've built so far, and then we'll add in the guys that we've added in and keep pushing forward. You know, that's sort of the name of the game, and I think we got the right people, which I think is what makes the biggest difference. Is we got really good people on the roster, on our coaching staff, on our team, and people that I think are really good at building relationships. And so, yeah, it's always a part of it. I'm not going to gloss over it and say that, you know, everyone just comes in and on the same page at every second, every moment. It takes work, and the guys that have been here have worked at it, and we'll continue to work with the guys that we add. So it'll always be in progress, I think, as every year you add more players and new players come in and old players leave, and that's just sort of the nature of the NFL. And so that's why every year I think is a new team, and whether you even when you have returning players coming back, each year your team is different. There's different pieces, different people around the team, and you have to keep finding out what your team is for that season, and that's what our job is, and that process is ongoing.
And to add to that, I would say, you know, it's a testament to the leaders that we have on this team. You know, guys like Jeff, you know, who is, you know, obviously he's always been a leader here, but to see where he's grown as a leader and doing things to getting the defensive unit together and those guys spending time together, you see that a lot, and you kind of see that within the relationships as guys flow throughout the building. And the same thing with Will, you know, with the offense, and those guys spend a lot of time together. So like Brian said, we have a lot of people here who value relationships, not just, you know, from our side of the building, but in the locker room. And all those guys have continued to work within each other. And I had a conversation with Jeff last week, and he was just telling me that, he feels really strongly about the locker room and, and how the guys are amongst each other. And, I mean, they are a cool group to be around. I mean, Calvin, you see this out at practice every day, after practice, you see Calvin and T-Boyd, out running sprints together. Those guys never played together before, but they've created that relationship, that bond, within each other as well as other position groups. You see, Tajay and Tony, how they're joined at the hip, at every turn. And so that's pretty consistent across our roster.
That is Brian Callahan first, Rand Carthon second, speaking about the widespread change that this organization has undergone over the course of the last several months. So, with the changes that have been made, there's going to be a lot of different things that continue to happen, and waiver claims continue on for the foreseeable future. But of all the different roster moves that they've been able to execute, what has been your favorite roster decision by the Titans brass since Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon? I don't want to say since Callahan was hired. Let's say since training camp, right? Since training camp, we've talked about Ridley and Cushenberry and all the other free agent signings that they've made, but they've done a lot of different things. Trading for L'Jarius Sneed, they've done a lot of different things since then that may not be as flashy or as high profile, but still matter a great deal to how this team is going to operate. So I'd be curious to know what the audience's favorite move that the two of them have made thus far is, because trading away Elijah Molden with $3.1 million worth of salary on his contract and Ernest Jones coming in making just about the same amount of money, that is a move that's really tough for anybody to argue with, especially when you talk about the idea of how many different safeties they've signed because they were dissatisfied with the variety of different options that they had there. I think that the trade for Ernest Jones in and of itself is an interesting move. There's a couple of different things that you can look at that you can pinpoint. Maybe you just like the way that they put together the roster. Maybe you like the fact that they're just getting rid of John Robinson players and you can actually get the fresh start that you're talking about because the roster is 75% remade at this point. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in there. The Elijah Molden deal, I know that's recency bias, and I'm not going to pretend like it's the best thing that they did all offseason, but it's a pretty savvy move for a dude. I mean, he's going to the Chargers. I don't know if he's going to play there. I'd be curious to see how many games do you think Elijah Molden is even active for in Los Angeles? Because they signed Tony Jefferson this offseason to come play safety. They've got Derwin James. They can get creative with what they do in Jesse Minter's new defense, the former Michigan defensive coordinator who follows Harbaugh over. But for spare pieces and parts, and $3.1 million is nothing to sneeze at. You can turn around and turn that into Ernest Jones. That's a great deal.
I'm not going to pretend to know the defensive back depth situation with the Chargers very well.
Titan, half Tennessee.
Well, Fulton's there. Fulton's there. But I bet Hassan Haskins gets more playing time than Elijah Molden. Hassan Haskins reunites with Jim Harbaugh. Haskins was a team captain for Harbaugh a couple of years ago. Kind of stocking up on former Michigan players, unsurprisingly, in L.A. They drafted Junior Colson, right? And then was there one other? I feel like they drafted one other Michigan player, too, in the most recent draft.
No, the running back went to the Rams, not the Chargers.
That's right.
So, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, because I went the entirety of training camp acknowledging that Malik Willis had improved, but saying they should not keep three quarterbacks. There's no point in keeping three quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. I don't care about the emergency quarterback rule. It has never been used in Tennessee Titans history. I don't think you should be making roster decisions that could cost you depth elsewhere because of it. So for me, it is trading Malik Willis. So not only not keeping three quarterbacks on the initial 53, but getting something for one of those quarterbacks in moving Malik Willis, which, by the way, I bet the Cleveland Browns would have loved to do with someone like Tyler Huntley, who they released recently after including him as one of four quarterbacks on their initial 53-man roster.
Can't take that Pro Bowl away from him.
No. So the fact that they got something for Malik Willis and still end up with QBs 1 and 2, which was always going to be Levis, then Mason Rudolph, probably, to me, the most savvy move that has happened so far. And then a very, very close second, if not tied for first, is the trade for Ernest Jones. The way that kind of, I don't know, fell in their lap a little bit with his situation in L.A. sort of just popping up. Oh, they've granted him permission to seek a trade. They're not going to give him an extension. And suddenly the Titans are able to address a position of need depth-wise and just get significantly more talented and more experienced at that spot by acquiring the former Rams captain.
You're getting some pushback. It's only one comment, but in the F&M Bank chat, Lowdown 612 on YouTube says, yeah, let's not keep an extra quarterback while Levis is out there trying to truck people. Now, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm reading this wrong, but I think getting something for Malik does not keep them from adding a third quarterback.
No, not at all. And
right?
My point is you don't need 3 quarterbacks on game day. I understand the point of the injury rate at the quarterback position right now in the NFL. But like we talked about yesterday, 60-something NFL teams or 60-something quarterbacks got snaps in NFL games last year. The injuries were insane, and not a single team went down to their third quarterback on a game day in the regular season last year. So this idea that it is absolutely necessary to keep a third quarterback on game day, to me, is a bit of an overreaction.
Levis hasn't knocked himself out of a game. The only injury that Levis has sustained for that particular person, because it's only one person who's pointing that out or making that point, the only injury that Levis has sustained was a high ankle sprain, the same high ankle sprain that knocked Tannehill out of the lineup. And you can argue hip drop tackles had something to do with Tannehill's. You can argue the Titans' offensive line had a good deal to do with the quarterbacks getting hurt behind center last year or under center last year. Levis is not somebody who, I mean, he does put himself at risk. I understand the point on that. But the idea that keeping 3 quarterbacks on a 53-man roster is the best way to protect yourself against Will Levis getting hurt. If Will Levis gets hurt, you're banged. Like, meaningfully hurt, you're banged. It doesn't matter. Malik Willis is there. C.J. Beathard is there. Whatever third quarterback you could get on the practice squad is there. If Will Levis gets hurt, your season's going to bleep. So I don't necessarily think that is an argument that carries enough water. Mike Sando, speaking of Levis, annual quarterback tiers. Mike Sando does a great job speaking to people, coaches, executives, GMs around the league, and putting quarterbacks in tiers. The quotes are anonymous, so you always get a little more honesty than you might otherwise in these situations. Where does Will Levis rank heading into his first full-time starting season? We'll tell you coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number. Mike Sando of The Athletic will join us shortly, and we will get his insights on the quarterback tiers that have been put out. Where does Will Levis rank? I'm sure you're going to be dissatisfied with the answer. I will tell you right now that he is tied with Anthony Richardson, and they tier the quarterbacks in the QB tiers. Surprising to no one.
It's context matters. The way you communicate things matters, because if you say he is tied with Anthony Richardson, yeah, that's one thing, but they're in the same draft class, right? High upside guys,
Sure.
second-year quarterbacks. But if you say he's tied with Daniel Jones, I feel like people process it differently.
Those things can be the same, and we will explain to you, or we'll have Mike Sando explain to you what the logic was behind that here in just a second. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. In the meantime, we're also going to touch on the Deshaun Watson thing with Sando, because the whole moving around money on his contract is so perplexing to me. Bert texted us all at like 6:30 in the morning, just completely befuddled by it, throwing out a bunch of different numbers on the contract of why it doesn't make sense. And I can't get a straight answer on why they would do this, other than they might be pursuing a trade, but it's still, pretty suspect. Kyle is up first this morning.
Good morning, guys.
Yep.
At first, I didn't like the Molden trade because I didn't understand. Our safeties don't seem to stay healthy, so he's going to have to play. And he's making a lot of special teams tackles, so I was like, it better be a fifth-round pick. But then we got Woods off the waiver wire, and I watched his highlights, and I started studying about him and reading. He's better than Molden, so basically we got a seventh-round pick and an upgrade at safety. And on the Ernest trade, we basically, if the draft chart's right and everything, we traded a seventh-round pick for Ernest. And that's basically trading Malik Willis, a third-string quarterback, for a starting middle linebacker who's a captain and hungry for a new contract. So, boy, I mean, we're making some moves. I think it's kind of the new thing, the new wave of the NFL. Like, if it's a guy's last year on his contract, go ahead and trade him for a late-round pick and then just, have a guy on the wing waiting and ready to go. It seems to be a pretty good trick.
Okay, a couple of things to clean up there. Ernest Jones was not traded for a seventh-round pick. The Titans sent Ernest Jones and a sixth-round pick, a 2026 sixth-round pick, to the Rams and got in return, the Titans sent a 2026 fifth-round pick to the Rams. They got back Ernest Jones and a 2026 sixth-round pick. So, not a seventh-round pick for Ernest Jones. The other thing, Julius Wood, who is one of the players that they added off of waivers from the Cowboys, Ali Gay, the defensive end, and Julius Wood, the defensive back. I have no idea whether or not he's better than Elijah Molden. If he's healthier than Elijah Molden, that would be a plus. But Elijah Molden was a third-round pick. He's a high-level college football player. Not to denigrate Julius Wood before he gets the opportunity to do things here, but I mean, we're not that far removed from Elijah Molden being the starting slot guy for this team and playing well until the groin injury cost him time. So injuries can happen and make the player less. Both things can be so. Whether or not they upgraded remains to be seen.
There was also a report from Justin Mello that Molden was just generally unhappy with his situation here.
Well, unhappy as I understand it, with the idea that they kept bringing people in to try and oust him. Okay. And also unhappy with the idea of, and I don't know how this works on a rookie contract, so I need some additional details there, but it sounds almost like they were looking for a way for him to make less money if he wanted to stay here. And of course, anytime you go to a player who's already in a contract year and say, and again, I want more information, but if they did approach the player and say, hey, you're on your rookie deal, you could potentially make more money, but while you're still here, let's make a little less, don't you think? I would imagine that those conversations would not go smoothly. So I would say that is probably accurate. He was less than enthused with how his tenure here ended. And so now he gets a fresh start because he got pushed out of the lineup by the players that they acquired, and the coaching staff and front office were clearly looking to upgrade at the position. So now, with everything else that the Titans did yesterday, Weaver out there on waivers, trying to get him back on the practice squad. What do we think the role for Ali Gay is going to be if they're going to bring Weaver back on the practice squad? Keep 5 edge guys, technically. Is he a defensive lineman? We talked about this yesterday. Or would they classify him as an edge guy? And I had somebody on the primetime show bring up last night, well, this is the Danico Autry replacement, because physically he is built like Danico. But one, you're not replacing Danico Autry with a Texans cast-off. 2, I think people are going to be surprised by how much different, and it's not like Jeff Simmons' role is going to be infinitely different, right? He's still a defensive lineman. He's still going to be stopping the run. He's still going to be getting after the passer. But I think Jeff's going to move around a little more in this defense than he did previously, which was Danico Autry's role there. You could move him around in a couple of different spots. You could take advantage of matchups that way. I think Sweat is going to provide Jeff Simmons with that versatility in this defense, so they can play Jeff Simmons at a couple of different positions along the front and just have, Sweat take up all the extra oxygen in the middle of the defense.
So Gay can play defensive end. He can play outside linebacker. Is it almost like a Danico Autry situation then?
Physically, no, but I would not
But
say,
in terms of how he can be utilized.
Yeah, they're looking for a couple of different versatile options, and we can jump back into that later on. Mike Sando of The Athletic joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. His annual QB tiers is must-read information heading into the football season, as well as everything else and all the other good journalism being done at theathletic.com. Mike, good morning. Thanks for hopping on. Up. We got you muted on our end, Mike. If you would unmute yourself in the Zoom so we can get this thing up and rolling here.
Yeah, you should have me.
Yeah, now I've got you. There he is. What a backdrop for Mike Sando, The Athletic, joining us here. That's very, very, very artfully crafted and curated, it would seem. What's your favorite book on that bookshelf behind you, Mike?
That's a good question. Well, how about the one that I wrote right here? The Football 100.
Look at that.
Promote that with Dan Pompei on the 100 greatest players in the history of the game, which had to be rewritten. As we were putting it together a few years ago, we had Jim Brown number 1, and then Brady went to a different team and won a Super Bowl. And we're like, all right, that settles it. Brady, it does go to the top. We were trying to not be too recency biased on that, but yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good one there. So.
Not too much revisionist history there if you got to make an exception for Brady. Yeah. The annual QB tiers piece that you do is always interesting to see how much we get caught up here in local markets, right, Mike, where we're talking about the same players every day over and over and over again. It's good to have some outside perspective, even if it runs up against with what we think is common knowledge about the players that we might have in Arizona, or obviously here in Tennessee or Jacksonville or what have you. QBs are always polarizing around the league. In particular, Levis seems to carry a bit of polarization with him. And I wonder for the audience, I guess for the audience, just to kind of set the table here, how do you go about putting together the piece? Because I know we have you on every year when you put this thing up, but just to refresh.
Yeah. So after the draft, I'll put together a list of all the veteran quarterbacks who are competing to start for starting jobs. And then I will talk to 50 coaches and executives in the league that I trust. And it's a different cast every year, but there's obviously some overlap year to year. And then we will go through and put them each into a tier. So obviously tier 1 would be, Mahomes and the guys who can really put it on their shoulders and win it, especially when they have to throw the ball. That's a huge component when the run game goes out the window. But for somebody like a Will Levis, there's kind of a catch-all category, which is tier 4. Tier 4 is either that veteran guy who's been around forever and is kind of a Minshew type. You can win some games with him, but you probably wouldn't see him as your long-term quarterback or even want to start the whole year. Or there's not enough information. And that's clearly Will Levis. So, Patrick Mahomes debuted in this thing after having one start ever, and people just put him in a 4, even if they like him. So the fact that Will Levis is down there in tier 4 for this doesn't mean that everybody thinks Will Levis is bad. What it means is it's really too early to say, but I want to put him in there because he has played, and you want to just get an early baseline for him. So I think his relevant standing in this quarterback tiers will be more like a year from now after he's had more. Because even like Brock Purdy had 5-6 great starts for the 49ers coming into last season. He still was right on the border of tier 3 and 4 because people just aren't going to anoint. They don't really want to do a full eval. So we're a little bit left with Levis on, hey, probably a lot more. What did you think of him in college? And did anything wow you from what you saw last year, which was a little bit of a mixed bag? I think he didn't play so great that people who were skeptical now are singing his praises, but he wasn't so bad that anyone who liked him, now doesn't like him. So, he's different than some of these other young guys because he wasn't a top 5 pick. So what's a realistic expectation? It means the league wasn't like, oh my gosh, when he was coming in, they saw some things they liked. They have some concerns, and he just needs to play.
Well, and it was pointed out by several of the people that you quoted in specifically the Levis blurb on how difficult it is to judge guys like, Bryce Young or Will Levis, anybody who was dealing with the amount of consistent pressure in their face on damn near every drop back that they had, Mike. It was untenable what was here last year in Tennessee.
Totally. He had no offensive line, protection and any of those sorts of things. So it is really hard to evaluate. And I think, obviously, the Titans made a lot of investments in their team this year. The free agency wasn't really addressing, the line as much, but they picked up some weapons for him. You could see that. And then they prioritized the line a little bit in the draft. So, we'll see. I don't think you're going to solve everything overnight, but there's always an excitement when you have a new play caller, a new offense, a new young coach. And that's the trend in the league, right? To go with these young coordinators or coaches. And we'll see if it's a good fit. And if it's not, it's still just year one. They can bring him back, or they could draft somebody, or who knows.
Mike Sando of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can read the QB tiers piece up at theathletic.com. You can also get it at nytimes.com. At Mike Sando on Twitter is where you follow him. Who was the most polarizing quarterback when you interviewed the executives, the coaches, and all the other people in the league that you did to get these quotes?
The craziest one really is Rodgers right now, because he got votes in 4 different tiers, which seems ridiculous, but he got 23 votes in tier 1 out of 50. And that's just people saying, hey, he's Rodgers. When he's healthy, he's a great quarterback. But a lot of people hedged their bets and said, it ranged from, I got to knock him down a notch because he wasn't as good as last year at Green Bay and now he's older, to, I think the guy's got to be close to done because of his age and the injury, and he's been banged up later in his career. He even had a thumb injury, I think, late in his time in Green Bay. So I thought that's unusual for a player of his caliber to have votes spread across so many categories. But I think on most of the other ones, you'll get some outlier views on guys, but it stacks up, I think, pretty neatly. I think it makes sense.
Mike, Anthony Richardson did not seem to be a terribly polarizing quarterback, at least with the quotes that are put in here. Quote, everybody is scared to death of him in the NFL. He is the closest thing to Cam Newton since Cam, being a man that big who can run the ball and rip it. Just how stark of a difference was it to hear some of these opinions on Anthony Richardson, who we saw play in 5 games last year, compared to his draft classmate, Will Levis?
Well, he and Will Levis had the exact same vote distribution. 10 votes in tier 3, 40 in tier 4. You're right. A lot of those quotes we're talking on Richardson were marveling at his ability and athletic ability, but still there's big concerns over whether that's ever going to play out over time because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. And really, there's a great admiration for what Shane Steichen does offensively and his ability to set up an offense for Anthony Richardson, but there's a lot of questions over whether Anthony Richardson is going to be able to be on the field enough playing that way, because he hasn't been able to do it in college or, for a long period of time or in the pros. And so he has the greatest boom or bust. I think those quotes reflect the fact that, no doubt, people, when they look at, let's say, Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, you can see what could possibly be with Richardson, but does that make it a safe bet? that is what you're going to get. I think there's still a lot of questions along those lines. And that's why, despite all that talent, not many people were willing to put Richardson higher than that and really gamble on him, with more votes in a higher tier.
Mike, you've been covering the league for a long time, not to age you, but you've spent a lot of time around teams and these coaches, these executives, and you understand how the process works. The way that teams have gone about the quarterback position, and maybe it's just, specific to the last couple of draft classes where you see, all right, Pittsburgh not making it happen with Kenny Pickett, player on a rookie deal, let's move him. Sam Howell, let's move him. Desmond Ridder, let's move him. Like these teams that are ready to hit the eject button, and we're talking about a particularly weak crop of quarterbacks there specifically. And then you have on the other end Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Herbert, guys who have accomplished things in the NFL, not of real consequence just yet, have yet to really establish themselves on the same level as, for example, your 3 tier 1 guys are Mahomes, Burrow, and Allen, of course, obvious to everybody at this point. Do you sense at all a shift in the way that teams are managing the quarterback position, where there are some obvious dudes that you have to pay the money to, but for the most part, if you don't have one of those clear and obvious guys, you can kind of keep shuffling the deck with how much more specialized the quarterback position has become and how many years we seem to have, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 guys this year get drafted in the first round of the position.
We've even seen people eject on veteran contracts like Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, right? And move some of those guys around. Or when it gets, with Russell Wilson, when the Seahawks just decide, you know what, we're out on this. And they, sometimes you take a big cap hit or something that maybe that would have been a deterrent, or the cash component would have been a deterrent as the teams change in their makeup and their ownership and how much money is on the line. You definitely see that. I am, though, intrigued by, if you look at tier 3, really, I feel like the top 2 tiers in general, you'd feel like we can go to the Super Bowl with our guy, without having the greatest team ever around him. Whereas in tier 3, I feel like historically, it's more like we can win with this guy, but the ceiling may not, we're probably not going to go all the way, or we have to have a really super strong team. But those first 4 guys, and you mentioned a couple of them, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, these guys are all super high paid. Yet the league is looking at them as like, well, they're just kind of, they're kind of in the middle of the pack. That's interesting to me that GMs feel that they can do that. And maybe there's a precedent set that, in Philadelphia or the Rams where, even if you do that, you can still get out of it. You can still survive and move on. Eventually, we just saw the Browns roll over a bunch more of Watson's money, creating, pushing out cap hits into the future. So, there is an ability, I think, and a feeling that teams can move on and change, sometimes even after you pay a guy a lot of money.
Have you gotten a single explanation, and I don't know how much digging you've done on this since that news became available this morning, but have you gotten a single explanation that makes sense on why the Browns would roll over Watson's money like that? Well,
they're on the hook for the same amount of money no matter what. Like, he's fully guaranteed for like 130 some more $1 million.
Right.
So this is all just accounting moves of how you move it around. So it just happened, so I haven't talked to anyone in the league about it, but my own feeling would be, just off the top, is, so if you're creating a bunch of space now, you can carry that space over to next year if it's unused. So they're probably moving around money and then envisioning that the future caps are going to grow a lot. And so you'd rather have greater cap commitments in the future when you have more room for it with your team. And they also are a team that's pretty good right now, at least their roster. They've already made this bet on Watson. They're basically saying, we're not cutting him right now, right? He's going to be here. We got to make this thing work. And so, here we go.
It's the most interesting quarterback situation in the NFL as far as I'm concerned, especially given that team, you could argue that the Browns have one of the best rosters in football right now. At Mike Sando is where you can follow him. As he mentioned, the Football 100 is available on Amazon if you are interested in reading about the top 100 players in the history of the game. It's a great resource for you. And also theathletic.com, a great resource for all of your sports journalism needs. Mike, thank you as always, bud. It's good to catch up.
Thanks. Enjoyed the show.
That's Mike Sando of The Athletic hanging out with us. We'll react to some of what Mike had to say and talk about Danny White's new deal with the University of Tennessee coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. We're going to get to Danny White's new deal with the University of Tennessee here in just a second, but I figure we better sit here for a little while longer and talk about the chat's strong reaction to Mike Sando of The Athletic. Very, very disagreeable to what Mike had to say. And tell me what you think is happening here. Because the QB tiers piece, and I want to make sure that I reiterate this, maybe I didn't do a good enough job on the front end, is Mike's job in the tiering process is to go around and ask other people in the league what they think of the quarterbacks. So it's not Mike's just putting what offensive coordinator X and defensive coordinator Y had to say about Anthony Richardson, Brock Purdy, and Will Levis into a tiering system based on the number of votes that each person got. Each voter placed 30 veteran quarterbacks into 5 tiers from best to worst. Quarterbacks were then ranked by average vote and placed into tiers based on vote distribution, beginning with Mahomes, whose 1.0 average vote reflected his status as the only unanimous Tier 1 selection. So it's not Mike's opinion that's being reflected in these tiers. It's the league's opinion.
Yeah, Football Fred on the F&M Bank chat says, this guy said everyone in the NFL is scared of Richardson, ha ha, in all caps. That quote, everybody is scared to death of him in the NFL, is from an NFL head coach. Like, that is not Mike Sando's opinion.
No, what I'm figuring out is happening here is there were a bunch of nice quotes about Richardson and a bunch of less than flattering quotes about Levis.
Even though they're in the exact same tier.
They're literally tied for the same position, tied for 26th out of 32 starting NFL quarterbacks.
But the quotes are night and day.
Night and day different.
Like with Levis, it's, I don't see the upside. With Richardson, is everyone is scared to death of him.
And guess what that reflects, Lucas? The opinion that we've heard from the league the entire offseason. How much higher are people on Anthony Richardson and the Colts than they are on Will Levis and the Titans?
Yeah, from the day of the draft. He was a top 5 pick.
Correct. Like that's why I'm laughing so hard at how butthurt. It's not just, I don't know what the audience at large, this is, I don't know how many people are watching in the chat. Oh, it says 894 people watching in the chat today. I don't know how many people are bent out of shape just in the chat, or if the FM radio audience or the podcast audience is shaking a fist at the sun 3 hours after the show, listening to that back. But like, it's not that deep. It's just one person echoing the same sentiment that you've heard for the past year and a half since these two got drafted into the league. Now, I want to go back to some of those quotes that you read about Richardson. Everyone is scared to death of him in the NFL, a head coach said. Again, the anonymous quotes allow for a lot more inflammatory stuff that you would not hear in press conferences or even in public moments or private moments. Another quote, he's the closest thing to Cam Newton since Cam, being a man that big who can run the ball and rip it, an offensive coach said. I'll scroll down to Levis, where it is not the same. Here's what an executive said, an anonymous executive, say that 5 times fast. I do think there was some good tape on him last year, talking about Levis. He showed confidence. He had nice energy about him on the field. He had a toughness about him. He looks like he can be a guy. He can get wound up a little tight. So I want to see how he handles the stress of expectations. Tell me how that's anything different than what we've been talking about Will Levis for 6 months heading into the season.
The opinion on Will Levis is going to be that until Will Levis forces them to have a different opinion. That's just what it's going to be. Most people did not pay much attention to Will Levis last year also. So their opinion on Will Levis is very much going to be based out of whatever it was going into the draft process. Yeah. And as we saw in the draft process, he fell to the second round. So, and my opinion on Will Levis was not great going into the draft. Most Titans fans' opinion of Will Levis was not. Thank you.
I want to know how many people in the chat should actually be saying that. How many people are doing revisionist history that they're standing for Levis now when they didn't want him in the first place?
The majority of Titans fans were not high on Will Levis going into the draft. Let's go run back the phone calls we got the day after they drafted him with the first pick in the second round. So most people did not sit there and watch every snap and did not keep up with every transaction the Titans have made and every training camp practice and are excited about the upside and the weapons and listening to Levis press conferences. Until he proves otherwise, most people's opinion of him will be very much rooted in whatever it was going into his draft process.
I just think it's so funny that when one individual person comes on the radio show and says the thing that all Titans fans have been complaining about, national NFL media saying, all offseason and basically since these two got drafted, that it becomes the villainization of that one person, which of course is ridiculous. It's the league. The league feels this way about these two quarterbacks. And the fact that there's not enough information on either of them to make a different determination than what their draft projection was, right? Nothing really has changed. I mean, obviously things have changed for the trajectory of these two being in NFL buildings for the past year and a half. Of course, things have changed, and they will be better or potentially worse for them. We will see. But the fact that we have not yet seen on the field the different consequences of Anthony Richardson with Shane Steichen for any amount of time. 5 games is all. He didn't even finish 5 games. He appeared in 5 games. That's the place where the Cam Newton thing would feel inflammatory to me, because what was Cam Newton until the end? Eminently durable and available. That you couldn't bring the guy down with 11 defenders if you tried, right? All he'd do is jump over you and dab in the end zone. Anthony Richardson can't get through, 3 games at a time because of concussions and then a shoulder situation.
Yeah, I did it. Damn it. I did the thing.
No, just can't turn your microphone on to
turn the microphone on to talk.
God.
It doesn't mean that people can't have a negative opinion about Richardson and be concerned about that stuff. And because a lot of people still have this opinion of Anthony Richardson that I get the height and weight and the physical stuff and the combine, but he couldn't go better than 6-6 at Florida. And that's true. He was erratic and inconsistent at Florida. The biggest difference is that Anthony Richardson, I know Will Levis has the physical upside and the arm and all of those things that if he maxes those things out, it could be really great. But Richardson has that, but to a level that we've literally never seen before.
Correct. We've never
at the
seen
combine.
it.
So I understand concerns. He was inconsistent in college. He was not a great quarterback in college. He can't stay healthy. He couldn't stay healthy last year. But if he is able to max out all of those tools, then it is going to be the first Cam Newton since Cam Newton. That's just what it's going to be. But it's okay to have very big doubts that he will be able to do that, because I kind of do.
Oh, sure. And those doubts are completely warranted. But we've already seen Cam Newton since Cam Newton. It's Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen is the best Cam Newton comparison of late.
Yeah, it just throws way more interceptions.
Than Cam did?
Yeah.
Josh Allen does not throw that many interceptions. He's become significantly more accurate.
How many quarterbacks turned the ball over more than Josh Allen last year?
I don't think any.
1, Sam Howell.
Sam Howell played that much football?
Great company to be in.
Anyway, Richardson. The quote would feel a lot different maybe if it said, it reads right now, everybody is scared to death of him in the NFL. Maybe if it said, everybody is scared to death of if he pans out in the NFL. Because of course, Titans fans should be scared to death if Anthony Richardson turns into something in the NFL, right? Because he's so physically gifted and overwhelming that you don't want that running through your secondary and leapfrogging linebackers and running into your end zone Cam Newton style. You've seen that. You've lived that. You don't want that anymore. So it's just, I think it's a product of a couple of things here. 1, nobody likes to hear bad things about their team. 2, nobody likes to hear good things about a team that their team goes against on a regular basis. And 3, Titans fans have been nothing but coddled is not the right word, but they've just been lost in this honeymoon phase. That nothing bad has gone wrong. Rand Carthon can do no wrong. Brian Callahan can do no wrong. Of course, Will Levis can do no wrong. Nothing's gone wrong this offseason. Why would anything be wrong? So I think it's a product of those 3 things, and I just think that the reaction is funny. Coming up next, Danny White gets a monster extension from the University of Tennessee. We'll tell you why it's important. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
11:02, good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Titans have continued to make moves this week. Yesterday, the team released outside linebacker Rashad Weaver and tight end Nick Vanette. Rand Carthon did say yesterday the Titans are looking to sign Vanette back, and reportedly the Titans are looking to bring back Rashad Weaver on the practice squad. Titans also traded defensive back Elijah Molden to the LA Chargers in exchange for a 2026 7th-round pick. The team made the trade for former Rams linebacker Ernest Jones, the fourth official. Rand Carthon was asked yesterday if it was concerning that the Rams were willing to part ways with Jones for only a late-round pick.
Well, no, I'm not, because, I have my intel. I worked in that building for 5-6 years, worked with Les for 9 years, and so I feel comfortable with the information I got out of there and the player that we were bringing in.
In NFL news, the Browns have restructured quarterback Deshaun Watson's deal, converting nearly $45 million of his salary into a signing bonus, giving the Browns over $62 million in cap space, which is the most in the NFL. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour upon us. Welcome in, welcome back. If you've been spending your time with us this morning, we're happy to have you. Sounds like we might have some moving parts around the noon hour. I don't know. Maybe we'll do something nice for the show, for the audience in the noon hour if the chat can get it together. The chat not on its best behavior today. We'll see if we can't straighten things up a little bit. What's the line about punishments will continue until morale improves or something like that? Something to that effect. You know what I'm talking about?
No. I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, we can probably Google it and find it out. Somebody's yelling it at their radio right now. I'm sure we can find some more information there. But what we can get you more information on is Danny White, the athletic director for the University of Tennessee. He has really managed the situation as best as anybody could probably have done it. What was your expectation when Tennessee hired the UCF athletic director, and then the UCF athletic director turned around and hired the UCF head coach?
Well, I remember the Danny White hire was very praised. Danny White was a very respected guy in that business. So, and he did nothing but either...
Meetings will continue until morale improves. That's what I'm looking for.
There you
Thank
go.
you, Cameron Clark. Huh?
It's from Monty Python.
Oh, well, I never saw the movie. I just know the phrase.
You never saw the Holy Grail?
No.
You are so uncultured.
Does that surprise you?
But the Danny White hire was always a really good one. What he did at UCF, he either sustained or turned around basically every program he was in charge of. Fundraising. I mean, the national championship thing at UCF, whatever you think of it, was a master marketing move by Danny White. So that was a great hire. The Josh Heupel hire was an extremely underwhelming one. And if people tell you that they thought that Josh Heupel would have Tennessee beating Alabama, winning double-digit games in 2 years, and on the cusp of a playoff spot in 4 years, they'd probably be lying to you. Maybe some of those people were out there, but I would venture to guess they're probably lying. It's crazy because Danny White now becomes the highest paid athletic director in the SEC with an annual base salary of $2.75 million a year, and he is still greatly underpaid for the amount of fundraising that he has done for this program. The Tennessee Fund reported its third consecutive record year across multiple fundraising metrics in the fiscal year of 2024. They closed the year June 30th with a total of $139.7 million raised. So whatever $2.75 million is, whatever percentage that is of...
Do the math. Do the math right now.
No, I won't.
Do the math right now.
The actual amount of money that Danny White raised for the University of Tennessee. But it's well-deserved.
I saw him counting on his fingers across the desk.
And look, every program is in a healthy place at the moment. Women's basketball has some climbing to do as Kim Caldwell takes over. They broke through the national championship barrier with baseball, but obviously the engine that runs the train that is the University of Tennessee's athletic department is the football program. And if Tennessee wins a national championship under Danny White, then he will be the greatest athletic director to ever come through the University of Tennessee. I think that would have to happen. If he hires the coach that brings Tennessee back to a national title with all the other success, baseball's first title, as much sustained success by the men's basketball program as we have ever seen, not by a coach that he hired, granted. In fact, a lot of the success happening on campus right now, not by coaches he hired. He did not hire Tony Vitello.
Right.
He did not hire Rick Barnes.
Okay, so who's on that list? Who's of the greatest athletic directors in the history of Tennessee?
It would be Coach Dickey, who was Tennessee's athletic director for a long time, and Robert Nealand on that list.
You want to slow down a little bit? I mean, winning a national championship for the first time since 1998 would, of course, be a massive. It's more than a feather in your cap as an athletic director. It is the crown jewel of the achievement of trying to get a program like Tennessee back up and running, especially if your hire is the person to do it. But those are some pretty important names in the history of this, just in the history of the university, not even just the history of the football program and the athletic department that you're putting Danny White up there with.
Sure, I get it. And look, Doug Dickey was Tennessee's AD from the 80s through 2002, where it was its best period in football in the modern era. And obviously women's basketball and some spikes in men's basketball as well. And Doug Dickey is just a legend at the University of Tennessee for that. But I don't know, man. Just the sustained success across the board and the fundraising aspect of it.
Fundraising, huge.
Which is such a big part of it nowadays. The way Danny White was able to, the fact that he was able to put a sponsor on Neyland Stadium without pissing off the entire Tennessee fan base, very well done by Danny White, you know? I mean, it would have been very easy to just make it Pilot Stadium, but he understands, Pilot understood, there would have been a massive uproar across the fan base. They found a way to do it while raising money and while keeping everybody happy, keep preserving the tradition of the stadium, all of those things.
I wish that I had an athletic director that did that with Assembly Hall. I'm still pissed about Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
Right, like Food City Center at Thompson Bowling Arena. You don't love it, you know, it's a mouthful, but you're not going to get up in arms about it. Neyland Stadium obviously cannot be touched.
No, you're more upset about the fact that you can't make fun of the Kentucky fans for Kroger Field anymore. Because
it's a shame.
Now you go to a grocery store, too, when you go to basketball games.
It's a shame. It really is.
So, Danny White's biggest accomplishment is what?
Balls are back.
Thank you, Coach Fulmer.
No, play the rest of that clip. Do you have that whole clip? Because that whole clip is hilarious. It's a different time, especially because of who Danny White is following. The Phil Fulmer athletic director experience, less than satisfactory by any measure, right? No matter how much you love him as a coach, how much you love him for what he was able to accomplish, hiring Jeremy Pruitt and getting up in front. Which booster club was this?
Oh, I don't remember.
No idea.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh, it's some Tennessee Rotary Club or something like that that Phil Fulmer is speaking to. He's got the microphone. He's feeling it. He gets fired up and he hits them with.
The balls are back. And before long, we'll be taking a bite out of everybody who plays ass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Coach Fulmer.
Well, no, he wasn't wrong. It just wasn't under him or his coach.
Now, that is an interesting question. What is, so far, Danny White's most significant accomplishment at the University of Tennessee?
Well, it's saving the football program from ineptitude.
Yes.
No,
it has to be the hire of Josh Heupel. It has to be the hire of Josh Heupel, especially
I mean, Josh Heupel is the face of this, but it is, on the whole, pulling a historically proud program and a fan base that is as diehard as any in college athletics, not just college football, pulling them out of the dumpster, however he did it, whether it's Josh Heupel, fundraising, Nico, Spire Sports, all of this. Heupel is a piece of this. Heupel is a very, very important piece of this, and we completely acknowledge that. So I'm not denigrating Josh Heupel by kind of pushing that aside, but it's all of it, getting the program literally out of the depths of the banks of the river that they were throwing the goalposts in after they beat Alabama, right? That's where Tennessee football was. That's how I look at it, at least.
Sure, but I do think a lot of people, the first thing that would come to mind would be the way he stood up to the NCAA alongside Don D. Plowman in the state of Virginia, and just the way all of that went with Danny White as a leading voice in it, because that was that was one of the most pivotal moments in college athletics. That moment of Tennessee being, you know what? No, we're not going to take this from you. We're not going to hear this. We're not going to deal with this anymore. And then winning, and then making the NCAA essentially powerless when it comes to their effort in trying to crack down on NIL investigations and all of those things. In terms of his influence in the big picture of college athletics, I think a lot of people would point to that situation with the University of Tennessee and the Commonwealth of Virginia going up against the NCAA. But yes, in terms of the athletic department specifically and the results on the field or on the court, it would have to be the hire of Josh Heupel. And that is somewhat incomplete as well, because we'll see what the ceiling of the Josh Heupel era will be, presumably in the coming years, right? As the quarterback recruiting talent continues to get better and better, Josh Heupel could have the best quarterback that he has ever coached, the most talented quarterback from a talent profile perspective that he has ever coached in Nico Iamaleava. What that could produce in terms of on-field results will be very interesting to see starting this year as they try to gun for a spot in the 12-team playoff, and that all trickles back up to Danny White. But a well-deserved raise, and Danny White is probably making 0.00000 something percent of the money he actually raised for Tennessee last year.
Okay, go ahead and send him some of your money. Go ahead. Send him more money.
He doesn't need my money.
Coming up next, Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan explain some of their roster decisions on waiver claim day after they trim the roster from 90 to 53. That process still ongoing. By the way, Titans on the practice field right now, as a matter of fact. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Balls are back.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number. We were just laughing about something during the commercial break, but we'll bring it to air and not be one of those radio shows. How often do you steal other people's jokes and use them as your own? How often?
90% of the things I say. Yeah.
I think that I could watch. What's Charlie's character? Charlie is the character on Always Sunny.
He is one of them, yes.
I could watch 3 episodes of Charlie on Always Sunny and get 95% of your jokes for the day.
It's an amalgamation. It's Charlie Mack and it's all of them.
No, but even down to some of your movements. And this was pointed out to me the other day.
But whomst?
Speaking
of stealing jokes, that's a Josh Pate original.
We have not told an original joke on this show in 4 years. The squash and the beef, you saying that you had a backpack full of ground beef after
completely stolen.
Me and Jeff's dust up. No, but even your movements when you've got your hands behind your back and just the way that you cocked your head at me, somebody said to me, "Is he just doing Charlie from Always Sunny?" I said, "Yes, that's his entire birth."
Maybe that's subconscious.
That's his entire personality.
Maybe that's repurposing that joke and completely stealing it. Yes, intentional, but the movements and mannerisms are probably something subconscious.
I just wonder how many people in an honest moment make jokes to their colleagues after they've heard a joke somewhere else and be like, "Yeah, I killed that one."
LAC on the FNM Bank chat says for him it's 60% Chappelle Show, 40% Martin.
Oh, that's a dangerous balance, as a matter of fact. I don't know whose jokes I've stolen the most. I'm sure if you gave me enough time to think about it, I could pull some inspirations. But either way, Titans roster explanations. There was a press conference yesterday. Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan in front of the media. They spoke for about a half hour. They answered a great many questions. Of all the different things, was there any decision that you felt Titans fans were questioning? Because for the most part, this is how I know it's a honeymoon phase. Everybody's just happy with everything that they do, right? Everything that they do. And by the way, there's not a lot that you would be able to push back on. I'm not pinpointing something specifically that I have issue with them doing. I'm just saying that they can do no wrong right now in the eyes of their fan base, correct?
Honeymoon phase still on.
Those are the vibes. And that's fine. That's what the offseason is. Everybody's undefeated until half the league is not, starting not today. Oh, a week from today we have NFL football. Tonight we have college football. We're going to talk about Deion Sanders, who's playing a little later tonight with Colorado here in just a little bit. But so no real issues with anything that the Titans brass, it seems, from the fan base on roster cut day, on trading Malik, on trading Molden, on trading for Ernest Jones. Everything's good. Richie Guzman says, "Don't include Rudolph in my honeymoon." So I assume that means he takes issue with the Mason Rudolph signing, or maybe Mason Rudolph is the backup over Malik. I'm not sure what the issue with Mason Rudolph is, but either way, I think that there is a lot of different stuff that this team has done that has infinitely improved this roster. That much is clear and obvious to everybody. We can all agree that this is going to be 10 times more, maybe not 10 times more, but significantly more competitive football team than it was the last 2 seasons.
The roster is significantly more competitive. That's on paper, yes.
The roster is significantly more talented. We'll see how talent marries with scheme. We have a sample size of an undefeated preseason. You can weight that however you want to. But it's better than having didn't the Browns go winless in the preseason this year? Every time Jameis Winston did the pregame speech, they lost the game or something like that.
Yeah, and the Patriots went winless before they went 16-0. You know that.
Mayo, by the way, your boy Gerard Mayo is getting crushed for leading Drake May on, apparently, according to Boston media.
Oh, is that a thing?
And then making Jacoby Brissett. I saw an athletic Celtics reporter today excoriating Gerard Mayo, cross-sport conflict from a different reporter covering a different team in the market, saying that if he was Drake May, he would be livid with Gerard Mayo and how they handled the Jake Brisket starting quarterback situation.
If healthy, Drake May will be starting when the Titans play the Patriots.
We will see.
Or Joe Milton.
I suppose that's possible. Ben McKee is my hero on YouTube, says the honeymoon phase ends at 12:02 p.m. next Sunday. Not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday, because, of course, that is when Week 1 action will be underway in Chicago for Tennessee and the Bears.
Shout out Ben McKee.
But with all the different roster moves made, some of them require explanations. Doesn't have to be too detailed, but two transactions in particular that caught people's attention. Waiving Rashad Weaver and waiving Nick Vannett with 5 edge guys and 5 tight ends on the roster. This was Rand Carthon explaining both Weaver and Vannett's situation.
Procedurally, and I think it'll be coming out here soon. We claim 2 guys at the cut down, and obviously you get an hour to make those moves. We'd like to get both of those guys back, but it was a procedural thing for us to be in compliance with the 53-man roster.
So, procedural things to be in compliance. He later in a couple of follow-ups said, yeah, our intention is to try and bring both of those guys back. So practice squad for Waiver and Vannett, if they should clear. Well, Vannett does not have to clear waivers. He's a vested vet.
No, they said they plan to bring Vannett back to the 53.
Oh, back to the 53?
Yes, like they explicitly said that. With Weaver, it seems like a practice squad thing, but with Vannett, I'll pull up the transcript.
Okay, no, I misunderstood that yesterday in the press conference. That's good context. Weaver might be a vested vet at this point. 4 years of accrued service?
Rand Carthon, the question was on if they are signing Nick Vannett back to the 53, one-word answer, yes. And then the follow-up on if they are going to have to make a procedural move cutting someone else, he said, we will not. We will be able to sign Nick Vannett back to the 53 without making any procedural moves.
Okay, there you have it. So, 5 tight ends, whether Vannett ends up coming back on as the 5th or somebody else ends up getting swapped out, because he's saying there that they don't need to cut anybody to bring back Vannett.
Nope. And he also said they're putting Cedric Gray on IR/designated for return.
Which is another part of this. And they said basically Rand Carthon got the opportunity to break a little news at the press conference yesterday, because I think it was Kayla that asked him whether they had planned or whether IR was in consideration at all for Cedric Gray. And then he said, yeah, I get to break a little news here. We're going to start Cedric Gray off on injured reserve, so he must miss at least the first 4 games of the season, and he will not count against the 53. He does not have to be on their active roster to be placed on injured reserve for 1 business day. That's a new rule this year that teams could use around the roster cut stuff.
Chef Rand on the F&M Bank chat says, I think the new kick return rule influenced the 5 tight ends decision.
That's another way to look at it. And, we talked about the idea of John Robinson's players head on a swivel, right? And what that could potentially mean for Chig. Weaver, for now, off. We'll see if at any point, he ends up making his way back to practice squad or active roster here, or if another team doesn't scoop him up. But I had brought up the idea of, well, is Chig actually safe? And could they be exploring possibilities for Chig, seeing as they clearly intend to turn over as much of John Robinson's roster as humanly possible? Bringing up the idea of the new kickoff and the blocking schemes that can be implemented and in ways that we haven't seen yet. Think about this. Coach Mack has talked about this a couple of different times. How vanilla have the kickoffs been in the preseason games and still led to explosive plays in the return game? Think about how much more special teams coordinators are going to be able to do when they can actually orchestrate blocking schemes within the kickoff. And we haven't seen teams do that yet, because teams don't want to give away schematic advantage unless you're Florida State on the opening drive of an international game against Georgia Tech with a 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
The further we get away from that, the more perplexing Mike Norvell's decision-making there was.
The first extra point attempt of the season is a trick play for a 2-point conversion in Ireland in week 0. And it was a great play, and they burned it. But I've seen this opinion. First, I heard it from Mike Keith on the Official Titans podcast in their episode a few weeks ago, breaking down all the new rules. And then I heard Bill Belichick say it. The opinion that, I believe Bill said it on the Pat McAfee show, the opinion that at some point, teams are just going to be booting it out of the end zone. Just give it to them at the 30. Especially if we see some explosive plays early in the season. You know what? Just give it to them at the 30. Now, where it gets interesting is 2-minute situations, right? Minute 30 on the clock, team down 2 with 1 timeout. Do we really want to give it to them at the 30, or do we want to try to pin them? Do we run the risk of an explosive play? That's where it could get interesting, but I could also see the kickoff going right back to just, boom, out of the end zone, rinse, repeat.
So, elsewhere on the roster, the running back discussion, I appreciated the just transparent nature of this answer from Brian Callahan when he was asked about the difference of Julius Chestnut making the active roster over yet another John Robinson draft pick, Hassan Haskins.
Yeah, Julius performed better than Hassan over the course of the preseason and in practice. Hassan did a good job, but Julius was just better at every opportunity that he had. And so Hassan still did a nice job on special teams, but ultimately probably wasn't enough for him to take that third spot from Julius, and Julius earned it. And he was really productive over the course of the preseason, and he's been really good in the practice sessions as well. So feel really good about Julius as our third back, and obviously Hassan has found work elsewhere, which we knew he would, but that's how it shook out.
So, cut and dried, one played better than the other, one performed overall with all of the things that we asked him to do, better than the other, and we knew the other one was going to get a job.
I heard that as what he did on offense playing running back was more important than what Hassan Haskins did playing special teams.
Sure, which is counter to the way that I think a lot of people, including myself from time to time, will look at the roster.
I mean, that because we kind of got drilled into that in the Vrabel era, I think.
Well, it's a new coaching staff.
Right? Yeah. For the third running back, it was more important for him to be better at playing running back than special teams.
Oh, wide receiver. I mean, we had that conversation with wide receivers all last year. Does Kyle Phillips play special teams? Should he be active on game day? Well, if he doesn't play special teams, then they're not going to have him active, and Traylon Burks is going to get 10 snaps to go out there and try and improve his conditioning. That was a whole thing, I want to say, against the Houston Texans late in the year.
Callahan also said this morning in his Breakfast with Brian chat, as dubbed by John Glennon.
Such a good name.
That just, press conference sit down with no video. He told Mason Kinsey he was the 7th receiver. If they had kept 7, he would have made it.
Now, I believe that Brian Callahan means that. Like, he wouldn't just say that for the sake of saying it. And did you see Mason Kinsey on Twitter?
He's great at it. Yes.
He's got the meme. Is it Barney's not the bartender? Barney is the drunk at the bar in The Simpsons. Mo is the bartender in The Simpsons that tosses the drunk Barney out of the bar, only for Barney to pop up again behind Mo. So Mason Kinsey had photoshopped his face onto Barney's body, getting tossed off the Titans roster, only to end up back on the Titans roster again.
For 5 years now.
Back on the practice squad.
Also, while we're talking about Breakfast with Brian, he said Tyler Boyd is the team's emergency QB at the moment.
Was NWI for
I
a period
believe
of time?
It was, yeah.
Was Kevin Byard for a period of time? Even though I want to say one of those two players was a lefty, which would be kind of interesting to see. Byard did throw that touchdown to Dane Cruikshank as a lefty in the Blaine Gabbert start against the Houston Texans in Week 2 after as disastrous a Week 1 game as any NFL team I think has ever had. Mike Vrabel's debut against the Miami Dolphins in the longest game in NFL history since the merger.
He also said, per Jim Wyatt, that they're still hoping to get D-Hop back for the opener in Chicago, that they feel good about where Jamal Adams is physically, hoping he's ready to go next week. And it sounds like L'Jarius Sneed is going to be a go at practice leading up to Chicago.
Well, that makes the most sense, right? The management plan for Sneed ramping up to the regular season, that's always what they've emphasized. Remember reading some of the Chiefs reporters and beat writers' reports on how little Sneed practiced during training camp? And then there was some more incremental practice work once the regular season began. All they've done is import the L'Jarius Sneed Kansas City plan to Tennessee. That's the thing that they're going to run this on. So the only two players that did not practice yesterday were DeAndre Hopkins and Jamal Adams. That's great for where this team is at right now. Now, we didn't necessarily flesh this out yesterday with him, with Callahan. I don't know how much clarity they got on it with Callahan this morning, whether we are still just calling the Jamal Adams stuff rest or whether there's something that's actually being managed there. Because I'm under the impression that he's healthy. And they've said several times that he's missed days for rest, and he's missed a fair amount of time since he's been on this roster. And that's fine. Like, whatever. If it's going to get him to Week 1, then get him to Week 1 and figure it out from there. But I just have that thought in the back of my head.
We'll get an injury report in less than a week.
Oh, the crafting of lies. One of the best times of year when we get the final injury report on the Friday before game day. But perhaps it will be less lie-filled. Another great term that John Glennon, or great phrase that John Glennon coined during John Robinson and Mike Vrabel's era, the injury report known as the crafting of lies.
See, at least we're giving credit to the jokes we're stealing on this particular version of the show.
I feel like we do that pretty regularly. People know that we're not original. They just assume all our material is taken from somebody else anyway. So, at least we could do is credit.
And we should have a disclaimer on the YouTube, on the live
On every
stream.
segment?
Yeah, it would just be, Jackson, if you could just put something at the bottom of the screen.
I mean, we cut every hour. Instead of the show intro, it's no original jokes.
Disclaimer.
You know what? No, but if they're going to do it to us, they should do that for every sports radio program across the entire country, because all this stuff has been done a million times over and over and over again. There's only so many original sports radio things left out there. Hell, we pioneered one of them. We were doing AI poetry on sports talk radio before anybody out there.
That's right.
And even that joke we can't take credit for. That was Bert's idea.
For what it's worth, Ernest Jones IV will wear 53.
Was at practice yesterday.
Yeah. Ollie Gay will wear 59, so he takes Shane Ray's number. Mm-hmm. And Julius Wood, the safety, will wear 24, so he takes Molden's number.
Titans also named team captains yesterday. It looked like some kind of event. Maybe some people in the audience were at the event. It was a dinner with the Titans or something like that. I don't know if that's like a preseason, pre-regular season type of, hey, season ticket holders, suite holders type of thing. Obviously not media invited to that, but they did name captains yesterday. Morgan Cox, Jeff Simmons, Will Levis, Lloyd Cushenberry, and Kenneth Murray, your 2024 Titans team captains. It was also announced last night at that dinner that Calvin Ridley would be a Week 1 captain as well. And for those of you who are asking about this, I believe we brought it up at some point last week. The Titans will again wear the C captain's patch on their chest that had gone away for a period of time. Sounds like some fans were interested in having it back or curious about bringing it back. They do intend. Brian Callahan clearly sees value in the physical patch, the C on your chest. So they will wear it this year as the 5 team captains and 6 for Chicago game day with Calvin Ridley. Coming up next, are you bitter? Are you sad?
Bittersweet is the word.
We'll explain Lucas's emotions about the SEC on, not CBS, but on ESPN and the theme music that was put out coming up next. So this is the theme for the SEC on ABC this coming college football season. Famously, the SEC no longer on CBS. The SEC on CBS Music. Are we still calling it the SEC on CBS Music?
Until the first Big Ten game kicks off on CBS, yes.
It feels so wrong to watch CBS play Iowa football highlights to the sound of the SEC on CBS. I don't like it. It feels foreign, and that's my conference. I'm a Big Ten graduate. For SEC fans, I can't even imagine how it is to hear that and to watch Rutgers football struggle down the field. Although Rutgers not terrible right now, not the worst in the Big Ten. That would be my Indiana Hoosiers.
Look, I think they did about as well as they could have, because no matter what you roll out, you are not going to replace the nostalgic feeling that is the SEC on CBS theme. They dressed up the,
this is right.
Just bask in it. Oh, that drum beat.
That's it. It's the drum beat. It's the drum beat
to me.
See, you can't play the SEC on ABC and then follow it up with that and not be immediately filled with sadness.
Oh man, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt to not see like a Florida and Georgia logo pop up, right? Or Tennessee and Alabama.
Gonna pop up. It's just gonna be on ABC.
Right, but just to that music with the CBS graphics and the camera panning down onto the field in Neyland or the Swamp or Jordan Hare, whatever. Yeah, it's tough. But it was never going to replace that. We just have to accept that loss. They did a nice job of bringing back some of the nostalgia from the old ESPN college football theme, which admittedly I'm only familiar with from watching, literally watching games on YouTube as a kid, or when ESPN Classic was a thing. Bring back ESPN Classic. Is that still a channel?
They started to shutter some of the ESPN auxiliary channels a couple of years ago, which is Classic, honestly, is one that should have stuck around, because now they NFL Network, I think, also pushed back on some of those things because they were putting all of the old games on NFL Network now. So ESPN and the SEC, it's a 10-year media rights deal that they've agreed to back in 2020. It takes effect beginning this year. And obviously, ESPN already had your occasional SEC game. Like, there were SEC games on a weekly basis, damn near.
Oh, there really was one a week on CBS.
Right.
The best one.
Sure. But it is the weight that it carries. So they try to bring back the Saturday Night Football slot for the first time and also carry the SEC championship game on ABC. This is a statement that was put out by Greg Sankey regarding ESPN and this whole revised or new era of televised SEC sports, as he's called it. By reaching into the past and connecting with the present, ESPN is bringing a touch of tradition to a new era of televised SEC sports. This reorchestrated composition, talking about the song, will enhance the presentation of SEC football on ABC by bringing a bit of nostalgia to the SEC's new Saturday television experience. So, if you had to do it, try to find the connections to the past to at least satisfy some contingent of the people that are going to be made upset by this. But I do think it's telling that the SEC commissioner has to put out a statement on the theme music that is going to be played around his games.
What do they say? Say it.
Do I have to?
Say it. I want to hear you say it.
It just means more.
Jackson fist pumping in the control room.
I'm already so sick of this. I'm preparing for this A&M Notre Dame game. Because famously, of course, I'm a Notre Dame football fan.
Ben McKee is my hero on the F&M Bank chat.
I just like reading that name.
By the way, I've texted Ben McKee, asked if he is aware that there is a user on the Zone's YouTube chat by that name. And Ben McKee, of course, of 247 Sports, who covers the Tennessee Vols, he said he is aware because that person is on their website a lot as well. So,
good.
Ben, hope you're doing well. Ben McKee is my hero on the F&M Bank chat, says Akron versus Ohio State is the CBS game on Saturday. So there you go. Look, time heals all wounds. I know a lot of people are happy to be done with Gary Danielson. I am not the Gary Danielson hater that a lot of SEC fans seem to be.
I think Gary Danielson's good.
He's fine. He is the ultimate people think he hates your team or that he worships Alabama over your team. People are really sick about announcers talking good about Alabama because Alabama has had nothing but good things for them to talk about for the last 15 years.
Well, talking good about Alabama? That sounds very Alabama of you.
Words are hard. I did spend quite a few years there. Sometimes it sticks around. But time heals all wounds.
Gary Danielson, he really talked good about Alabama.
I can only hope that in 10 years, let's say 10 years from now, that the SEC on ESPN theme has kind of replaced that in our hearts. We will always have that nostalgic tinge that kind of just ripples through and pulls on our heartstrings when we hear that theme and hear the just lovely tones of Vern Lundquist or Brad Nessler, who did about as good of a job in replacing Vern Lundquist as humanly possible.
It's rare that an icon can leave the booth like that, and it seemed pretty seamless.
Absolutely. There you go, Jim on the FNN Bank chat. Gary sucked, Bama homer. So there you go.
Well, can I say objectively, like without SEC affiliation to my collegiate existence, like when I watch Gary Danielson do a game, it's evident to me that Gary watches the game and is able to break it down with the kind of nuances that require, like whatever slights, real or imagined, he might be tossing at the odd SEC team that's not Alabama or Georgia or something like that. I don't think it's egregious enough unless you are a diehard SEC fan, because of course that's tribal and you're going to hate anybody who's not clearly and obviously for your team.
Well, I will say, I can't wait to see what team flashes across your mind when, in a few years from now, you hear the SEC on ESPN theme. Because when you hear the SEC on CBS theme, it's colored by Alabama dominance, right? And then Georgia rising up, and obviously iconic rivalries. But who are we going to think about when the SEC on ESPN theme plays on our TV or comes across, our timeline on the internet in a few years' time, in terms of what's going to happen over the next few years? Who is going to take that place as the face of the conference? Who presumably at the moment is Kirby Smart. They have the best team in college football. But who's going to unseat Georgia at the moment? Who's going to be the stumbling block that Alabama provided under Nick Saban? Will it still be Alabama under Kalen DeBoer? Can Steve Sarkisian sustain that? Can Josh Heupel pull Tennessee into that tier? Same with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. So the way it sort of ushers in a new era of college football with the 12-team playoff and doing away with divisions and NIL and all of these things, there is a level of excitement to it, and it is important to keep some elements of what we remember in any sort of nostalgic sense of college football, which they have done, bringing back some of the old college football ESPN themes. So that I do appreciate. Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
Thought he was done. That's my fault.
615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Coming up next, Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes play a football game today. They are going to be one of the more intriguing storylines of this entire college football season. Also, Rand Carthon's going to join us. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Titans have continued to make moves this week. Yesterday, the team released outside linebacker Rashad Weaver and tight end Nick Vanette. Rand Carthon did say yesterday the Titans will look to sign Vanette back to the 53, and Brian Callahan said this morning the Titans will look to bring back Rashad Weaver on the practice squad. The team also traded defensive back Elijah Molden to the LA Chargers yesterday in exchange for a 2026 7th-round draft pick. Titans made the trade for former Rams linebacker Ernest Jones IV official yesterday as well. He will wear number 53. Week 1 of the college football season kicks off tonight. Only one SEC team is in action as 11th-ranked Missouri hosts Murray State at 7 p.m. Colorado hosting North Dakota State at 7 on ESPN. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're happy to have you. Titans GM Rand Carthon going to call in here in just about 20 minutes. We'll get the latest on the post-roster cut and everything that they've been working through from a roster standpoint here in the last, not 24, but 48 hours. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to join in at any point, you also have access to the F&M Bank chat on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, which has been behaving a lot better since I threatened them in the first hour. So good to see that we are coachable around here. Speaking of coachable, where would you rank Deion Sanders and Colorado on a scale of most to least interesting storylines to follow in this upcoming, I guess this college football season has begun. We have week 0. We're underway. Week 1, we've got games tonight. So Colorado will play tonight, and this will begin a very, very interesting season with a ton of scrutiny on a polarizing coach and a polarizing program that people just cannot seem to get enough of, even though they were not very good last year.
I suppose it's a top 5 storyline in college football.
Does it actually matter? Like in the landscape of the college football playoff, Deion Sanders and Colorado do not matter yet.
No, they don't. They don't matter in the playoff race, nor do they matter in the title race until they prove otherwise, and they are a long way from doing so. They matter because they're interesting. They matter because they are reality TV and because Deion is Deion. Are they the most interesting team with a ceiling hovering around 6 to 7 wins, if that's what we want to assign to them? Arguably, but I'll say I'm more intrigued by Florida this year than I am Colorado, personally. I'm much more intrigued by what Billy Napier has to do to save his job and be the head coach of the Gators next year, what that will mean for DJ Lagway, the 5-star quarterback that is on campus now and supposedly the future of their program. So I am more intrigued by that and how week 1 could impact things in the swamp more than I am with Deion, because I can just kind of look on social media and see what are people talking about with Deion. Florida is a program of consequence that has not had enough of an impact in the postseason picture in a long time with their standard. Colorado, to steal your phrase that you stole from Mike Vrabel, that Vrabel stole from Ron Rivera.
Yes.
They're interesting. They're not important.
It's a good phrase. It's a very stealable
Unfortunately,
phrase.
it is.
Why is that unfortunate? Why can't you just steal people and give steal things and give steal people? That's a problem. Steal things and give proper credit. Doesn't that make it all right afterwards?
Florida is important, right? Like, they're interesting and important. It's Florida football. It's important.
Well, Colorado, I'm sure there are Colorado fans or people who would advocate that Colorado did matter at one time. Now, they never mattered in the same way that Florida has over a consistent amount of time in the best conference in college football, but they have had some history of winning that has gone with a lot of losing before Deion was hired, and there's still more losing around Deion. But there's no question that his presence alone has made a difference in the program's trajectory. But in terms of the landscape of the college football playoff, It does not matter. I see some interesting comments in the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. By the way, that game is the North Dakota State at Colorado on ESPN tonight, 7 p.m., so that will be worth paying attention to because North Dakota State is no slouch of a program. They consistently win national championships at the Division II level, and we will see what they look like up against a roster that is continually in flux. You want to talk about rosters in flux? Colorado has never been more in flux than it is right now. But I see a comment from Matt on YouTube that says, if you ain't rooting for Deion to fail, are you even a football fan? I get some of it, but I really don't get that sentiment. I'm not rooting for Deion to fail. I'm not rooting for Deion to necessarily succeed. I'm just kind of curious. I want to see if any of this is sustainable. I want to see how serious. I mean, I think he's taking it seriously, and I think he's doing it very, very much his way. But is it going to be at Colorado? Is it going to be at somewhere else? What happens after Shedeur leaves? What happens to Shedeur this season? With the NFL draft intrigue around him, obviously, is a projected top 10, no lower than top 10 prospect, from what I can tell in the way too early mock draft. Now, this season could change things. But I certainly don't root against Deion Sanders. I get why his personality rubs people the wrong way. But I just want to know if it can be done the way that Deion is doing it. Because Mike Norvell is kind of trying something similar. Pate brought this up yesterday. I thought it was an excellent point about acquiring talent through the portal and trying to keep yourself, not just keep yourself above water, but use the portal as best as you can use it. And it not panning out the way that you wanted it to because you got all the talent, but is your talent a team? Is your team prepared to play as a unit, to play for one goal, to achieve the ultimate, to achieve the ultimate accomplishment together, working for one another, playing for one another? Or are you just there to get to the portal, get your money, get the best kind of opportunity that you can, and then the winning or lack thereof, it may happen, it may not, depending on how that team coalesces.
Mike Norvell is doing it as much as any major Power 5 school is, I suppose, in terms of the portal kind of outweighing recruiting. Florida State still gets out and recruits. Mm-hmm. The base of their roster was still built in recruiting. And look, they finished with a top 15 class last year. Nothing crazy inspiring. This is similar to where Tennessee finished. If you look at the 2024 247 talent composite, which Pate brought up yesterday, just a good measure of the talent profile of every team based on players on the roster and how they are evaluated based on what they were as recruits and as portal prospects. Alabama, unsurprisingly, is number 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Texas 4, Clemson 5. Florida State ranks 13th. Colorado ranks 31st. For reference, Tennessee ranks 17th, which is, I think, 6 spots above what they were last year when they were kind of in the early 20s. But I think the prevailing thought, though, is that it's not sustainable to do it at the level that Deion is doing it. Deion's not going to kids' living rooms. Like Deion's not going to Tupelo, Mississippi.
You don't have to
sit in a kid's living room and talk to his grandmother. You know what I mean? He's not building a foundation in recruiting. Colorado is so flashy because they bring in high-profile transfers and occasionally a blue-chip recruit that wants to be a part of that. But I don't think that's sustainable, and I'm fascinated to see what happens when his kids aren't playing there anymore, specifically Shedeur Sanders. I wonder if we get a similar Colorado experience this year where they play North Dakota State tonight. If they win there, they go to Nebraska week 2, which is a very interesting matchup. Dylan Raiola, the freshman quarterback, and Matt Rule, year 2 at Nebraska. Colorado won that game last year in Colorado. Then they go to Colorado State, which was a thriller last year, an overtime thriller. Then they host Baylor. Then they go to UCF. Then they start to play Kansas State and Arizona. And their last 3 games are all 3 teams inside the preseason top 25, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. They're also in the conference that might have the most attrition in the country in the Big 12. There is no clear cut, like OK State's the favorite, but there is no clear cut standard. Everybody's chasing this one program. So that could make things interesting. I could also see them really tailing off like they did last year with the fun start. Everybody's talking about Colorado, and then it's what they always were going to be, and that's a 4-8 football team. I could see that this year, but instead make it a 5 or 6 win football team.
Well, I want to go back to something that you said about you not thinking it's sustainable, because I think definitions of sustainable here are worth taking a look at. When you say sustainability, are you talking about the sustainability of Colorado, or are you talking about the sustainability of the method that Deion is trying to apply at other programs? Because I'm more looking at it from the latter. I think that Colorado is where Deion is at right now, and Deion is doing what he's doing right now at Colorado. I want to see if Deion can turn this thing around, and however long Deion's at Colorado, to do winning of consequence, to achieve winning of consequence. And then if he takes it somewhere else and he does it in a similar fashion, maybe it's a little faster, maybe it's a little slower, but at a program of a greater scale, that to me is sustainability of the method. Whereas I think people, what you might be talking about, unless I'm mistaken, is sustainability for Colorado.
I don't think you can win anything of consequence building a roster the way Deion is building a roster.
Okay.
Just like I don't think
so you're talking about the method, same as I.
Just like I don't think you can, win Super Bowls by missing on every draft pick and just bringing in free agents and paying everybody. It's a very similar concept.
Yeah.
So if Colorado goes 6-6, that is a successful season for a team that won one game 2 years ago, and they're going to do it being flashy, and Shedeur Sanders is going to be making plays, and Travis Hunter is one of the most exciting prospects in all of college football. But is it sustainable to win something of consequence like you're saying? I think absolutely not. And I'm curious at how interested Deion is in adjusting his method in order to win something of consequence, or if he's fine doing it the way he's doing now with this kid playing quarterback. But then what when Shedeur Sanders goes to the NFL draft?
615-737-1045 is how you can chime in. A handful of college football games. No, I shouldn't say a handful. It was like 30 college football games tonight. A couple of SEC teams playing as well. Murray State is visiting Missouri. And who's Arkansas's opponent? I know Arkansas also plays tonight as well. We'll find that for
you. Remember, Eli Drinkwitz demanding Mizzou fans to show up for that game.
Oh, that's right. Do you think he's going to take a shot at him in the postgame if the attendance is not sufficient for the week 1 matchup against Murray State and the Mighty Racers?
Arkansas has Arkansas Pine Bluff as they break in that Bobby Petrino offense, led by Talon Green, the Boise State transfer quarterback.
Bobby is up next.
Bobby Petrino?
Hey.
Hey, Bobby.
Hey, I am not a... Hello?
Yes.
I am not a Deion fan by no means. Deion is good as making stars. Stars don't win games. Teams win games.
Well, certainly in football, that logic is applicable. Stars Matter is famously is that podcast still going? Stars Matter?
No, I think that was coined by Ari Wasserman of The Athletic, which he helps.
It's a good name for a podcast.
He co-hosts Until Saturday, which is The Athletic's college football show. So I don't think there is I may be wrong, but I don't think there's a podcast by that name.
The answer, Bobby, I think both things can be so. In college, certainly it is harder for a star to just go out there and win games, but it is not unthinkable for a star player in the world of college football to help his team win more games than they should if they're an inferior team. But also, you have to have if you're going to win at a championship level, then you have to have both. You have to have stars, you have to have team cohesiveness, cohesion. And you almost can't have one without the other. There are plenty of teams that have been vying, behind Alabama and Georgia that have stars and have good teams and still can't get through the toughest opponents because that's just the way they have better players than so many other teams do at Alabama and Georgia and have in the last couple of years. Clemson the same when they were, at the top of the heap instead of what are they ranked 14th now coming into this game against Georgia. I think that in particular, Deion is very adept at star power, but is he making stars at Colorado that aren't Shedeur? Travis Hunter is a star.
Travis Hunter also was the number 1 overall recruit in the country that was committed to FSU.
And Travis Starr is a phenomenon because of his playing both ways. I mean, there was a good piece on ESPN.com this week about coaches are legitimately trying to figure out his biomechanics and stuff like that. Like he's made of the stuff that Wolverine is made of because he can play both ways in college football and not really miss a beat. I mean, there are obviously some wear and tear. Yeah. Some wear and tear. But still, it's pretty impressive to see. But is Travis is Deion Sanders making Travis Hunter a star, or is Travis Hunter, by nature of his ability, a star player?
Sure.
I think that's a fair conversation to have.
Uncle Bob on the F&M Bank chat asks, are the Wade twins still at Colorado? That is a local tie at Colorado. Destin and Keaton Wade, who had an incredible run together at Summit. Destin playing quarterback, Keaton outside linebacker. Initially, they both went to Kentucky. They did both transfer to Colorado.
Ranik on YouTube says, just let the man work, talking about Deion, and do his thing. Leave the personal attacks alone. That's why he gets angry. No, there's a degree of sensitivity that Deion has, that he is turning what is completely fair criticism of how Deion Sanders, like there are completely fair criticisms of how Deion is managing this thing, and that he is taking those as personal attacks. Those are professional attacks. Those are not personal attacks, and that Deion isn't discerning between the two is how Deion wants to handle the thing, and he's made it outwardly contentious with a lot of media, including local, apparently, Denver Post columnists. But those are professional criticisms, not personal criticisms, and I think people need to discern. All right, coming up next, Titans GM Rand Carthon.
It is lunchtime. That means it's time for Hattie B's. At any one of their 6 locations, the factory at Franklin, Lower Broadway, Melrose, Midtown, Nashville West, and the Nashville Airport. By the way, the Franklin location has added breakfast. They are open daily at 7 a.m. You got to go try the classic hot chicken biscuit, the pimento cheese and hot chicken, the hot chicken and waffle stack. You will thank me later. Also, bring the heat to your event. If you're having a party, wedding, or a corporate function, let Hattie be your guest of honor. They do drop-off catering, full-service staffed events. They've got you covered. Hot or not, everything in between. If you need a place to host, check out their private dining room in Midtown. This space is awesome. It accommodates 40 people, and all you got to do is book it and show up. Their team at Hattie B's will do the rest. Family-run restaurant serving up your favorite Southern food, an authentic Nashville hot chicken. You know it's the best in town, the best sides in town, I might add. Download the Hattie B's app today. Skip the line to order for pickup or get it for delivery. You get a free dessert just by downloading the app. And go to Hattie B's for lunch today.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Titans doing a lot of roster work, continuing to do a lot of roster work because, remember, it is only an initial roster, not final by any means. Titans GM Rand Carthon joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Very kind to take some time out of his schedule. What's going on, boss man?
Not much. They not like us, huh?
Something like that. Wait, I mean,
Great way to kick it in to start it.
You picking sides in the beef? What do you got?
Nah, I keep those to myself, but I was in tune.
So obviously, a lot of things going on. I hate to even have you call in because I'm sure your phone line has been red hot over the course of the last couple of weeks. But with this process for you guys, not just you, but for your staff, I wonder if you can give the audience a little bit of insight into how the delegation of labor works between Anthony Robinson, Chad Brinker, his involvement, and how you guys went about this particular roster cut.
So, the way we go about it starts with our preseason scouting, which is headed by our director of pro scouting, Brian Gardner, and our assistant pro director, Kevin Turks. And those guys and their staff, they split up the league, and we watch what we call the bottom of the roster for every team, and we have our guys kind of tell us who do they like, who would they recommend for our roster in various roles, whether it's on our active, whether it's a player we'd like to try out, a guy we'd like on the practice squad. And then once we get those recommendations in, then we all go in the room. We lock ourselves in the draft room over the course of a 3-day period, which was the week leading up to the New Orleans game. And we watch every single player. Probably came out to a little over 150 guys. We watch every single player at every single position, give them I guess for lack of a better way to put it, a label, put them in a category and stack them and rank them. And when the waiver comes out, we just, we wait for those guys to come available, and then we make decisions from there. And then just in terms of the cut down, it's a continual process, between myself and, Callie and both of our staffs. And, we come to a final agreement about how we see the roster, positions where we want to go heavy or light, and that's it's questions and conversations with everybody. And, we come to a decision. So, even coming up into, the last game, after the last game, it was a couple conversations the morning of, cut down, which, we still had to work through. And, again, as you guys have seen, we've been very busy, over those couple of days. So those weren't just rush decisions, things that just popped up. Those are things that we were well aware of and well prepared for.
Well, I mean, you have to be. You said you get an hour to submit the waivers on the waiver claim process. That's correct?
Well, once you claim someone, like when we claimed Ali Gay and Julius Wood, we had an hour to release two people to make the corresponding move. So that was the hour change. So we had to, play with some things and kind of, move some things around and to still allow us to get guys back that we want to have around here.
Well, certainly a lot of movement on the roster. In particular, a handful of trades. You guys acquire Ernest Jones from the Rams. I know he was out there and available yesterday for me to catch up with him for a little bit, and then guys on the practice field right now, if I'm not mistaken. But
literally just got off.
Okay. Well, were you out there taking in practice for a period of time? Anything you want to share?
Practice was good. It was hot.
But buddy, it's been that for 2 months. Practice was good and it's hot.
No, it was particularly hot today. I tell you that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was still playing if I could have made it through today.
It's the Middle Tennessee heat is no joke, and you guys have a lot of noon games on your schedule, so guys are going to have to get used to that in short order. But the movement on the roster, let's start with Ernest Jones. I was joking on Twitter about this the other day. Denard's just going to blitz the holy hell out of people this year, huh?
Man, look, you got two heavy dudes in there, and him and K9 that know how to get to the quarterback, from a blitzing perspective. Ernest was, that conversation, started with, myself, Les Snead, and Tony Pastors. Both of those guys, Les I worked with for 9 years, and Tony I worked with for 5 years. So, obviously we have the relationship there. And, Ernest is someone that they held in high regard, but they, found themselves at an impasse. And, they were looking for a home for him. They wanted to do right by the kid. And, we had those conversations over the course of a few days. And so that's kind of, how it ended. Again, I know there were some questions about, whether he was healthy or wanted a new contract and all those different things, so we were able to have, conversations with his representation, which I'll keep between us. But I know we're at a really good place with him. I know he's excited about the opportunity. He's a South Georgia guy. He and his wife have been together since high school. He went to South Carolina, so being here in Nashville helps him get closer to home, closer to family. He's a new father, so, I'm sure being back in this area will really help him and help free up his mind. But it was just an opportunity that we couldn't pass up to get some depth there at that inside linebacker position.
So those conversations were, because it was a pretty short window, at least from when media found out that he was going to be available via trade or potentially available via trade. So you guys were having those conversations prior to, for example, Chance Campbell's injury.
Yeah, we had those conversations then, so they were already started. And it's not like, it's so unfortunate what happened to Chance with the great offseason he was having. And it's not like they picked up any more, after that. So it was just a conversation that we had that we were aware of. And again, I worked with those guys for a ton of years. And so, I know how those guys operate, and, we were always open and transparent with each other about everything that was going on. And so we were put in a position where we felt comfortable making a move, so we did.
Titans general manager Rand Carthon here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
So, Rand, you said you guys got into that room a few days before the preseason finale in New Orleans. How much weight did you assign to that game against the Saints? And ultimately, what performances there on Sunday had a big impact in your decision-making this week and earned themselves a spot maybe just by what they did in that game?
Yeah, I mean, for everybody, it's another opportunity for us to evaluate, and you got to take it into consideration. We always go back, back when they had 4 games, we would still go back and watch the 4th preseason game on some guys, because back then, guys, some guys wouldn't play until that 4th game. So it's the same thing now with 3. Some guys you may not have seen until the 3rd game, whether that's on our roster or other rosters. So, we still had time to go back, and that's why we do our process the way we do it, and it gives us time to where, what we call like a scramble. If we got a scramble towards the end, a guy that's coming free that we weren't aware of, or a player that we hadn't seen through the first 2 games, we get to see him for the 3rd. We have time, and we're not like rushing ourselves. So, like I said, I commend our staff. Brian Gardner, Kevin Turks, Anthony Robinson, A.J. Highsmith, and all of our area college scouts, and even our young bucks, Kalen Reed and Keenan Agnew and Corey Cooper and Michael Johnson. Everybody took part in this process, and I think we did a really good job of being able to add to this roster.
You mentioned A.J. Highsmith and a variety of different names there, obviously, on the staff, and this is a staff that you guys had put back together or added a lot of pieces and parts to prior to this process going down. How have you liked the way that everything's flowed and the distribution of labor, essentially, with all the new people that you've put in different spots that you've brought into the organization, and also the promotions, because you guys did promote a handful of people?
Yeah, no, it's been great. I think everyone here understands their role and where they fit in. It's an open line of communication between everybody, and it's been going really, really well. It's a part of our off-season overhaul. We talk about the players, and I think I've said this a few times, like the players and the way we've improved this roster, with the players is evident, but I think it's a continuation of improving our organization as a whole. It started with the coaching staff. It started with, first Callie, being able to get him, and then the staff he put together to come in, and then it rolled into the players. And then for us in personnel, most of our changes come post-May. So, being able to promote a couple guys, like Dale Thompson and, adding a A.J. Highsmith and a Sam Somerville only improved, our side on personnel, and then allowed us to, get a bunch of guys in this building that really understand the game of football, understand how to evaluate talent to make us better.
A lot of people noticed the decision to keep 5 tight ends. How much of that was just the versatility that you can get with each of those guys bringing something different? And how much did Thomas Odukoya help himself with that one rundown on the kick 6 on Sunday?
I know that was a viral clip, but Thomas O, he earned his spot, before then. I think he's shown up at every turn, this preseason. He's improved drastically since he was brought here and, since my time evaluating him, and how he's grown to be, a really good inline blocker, which is hard to find in this league now. And we feel like, at that tight end position, we got 2 guys in him and Nick Vanette, as your Ys. And then you got guys that are, C. Wiley is more of a combo guy that can do some Y stuff, do some F stuff. And then you got Chig and DMR that are your, that are your Fs, your athletic kind of move tight end types. And so, those guys earned it. Like Callie and I have said, we weren't saying coming into the situation saying, oh, we're going to have 3 quarterbacks and we got to sign a 3rd quarterback or have a 3rd quarterback just because we said we want to have 3. We wanted to have the best 53. And those 5 guys were a part of the best 53-man roster we could put together.
Titans GM Rand Carthon on with us. Titans just wrapped up another day of practice, getting ready for week 1 at Chicago. Rand, yesterday the Elijah Molden trade was reported on but not official. Today, or since then, it has been made official. What details can you share with the audience about how that came about and why that was in the best interest of your team?
Well, it was a opportunity for us. The Chargers called and they were interested in Elijah, and Elijah's been around here for a couple years now and has done some good things here. But he was getting passed up, on our roster, and there was a situation where we would have kept Elijah, but the opportunity for us to add a draft pick, coming into this preseason prior to, and some of the moves we've made, we only had 5 draft picks. And so, you need more at bats to, and continue to improve the roster. And if you look at some of the guys that we've added, in rounds 5 through 7, these last 2 years. Last year it was, you get Josh Wiley in 5, Jalen Duncan in 6, and Colton Dowell in 7. And this year you get Jarvis Brownlee in 5, Jaquan Jackson in 6, and Jalen Harrell and James Williams in 7. So we want to make that a staple of of our program and how we're going to go about it. So it was an opportunity to add some more of those late round picks to allow us to continue to improve this roster moving forward.
Well, and certainly you get a late round pick back from Malik Willis, who I know a lot of people who have gotten to know both Elijah and Malik Willis, and a lot of dudes that come through teams as you cover them over multiple years. Just happy to see dudes like that who have worked hard and are good people getting additional opportunities. But for Malik, a promotion in essence with getting to be the backup quarterback in Green Bay. From the time that you got here with the evaluations that you had on the roster before you took the job, Rand, and the time that he ultimately goes to Green Bay, how much progress did you see him make at the position?
I think it was night and day. And from the moment I got here, it was a conversation with Malik, between myself and Braves and him, about what the expectation was for him moving forward and, the natural next steps of him growing into becoming an NFL quarterback. And he took all those things serious and worked on them, last offseason. And he had his ups and downs, but he continued to improve. And then this year he comes in and it's a new staff. It's a new way of doing things. And, Bo Hardegree really poured into him. And he took the coaching and he took the opportunities and made the most of them. So he's improved, drastically. Other teams called, on Malik, but this was an opportunity for Malik to be a backup, for him to be the number 2, which I think he's earned the right to be a number 2, instead of holding him here as a 3, we want to do what's right by people while also, doing what's best for our organization. And like I said, to be able to get a pick, and do right by Malik, it was an opportunity we didn't want to pass up.
Lucas will not let you get off the phone, even though you're an incredibly busy person, without asking you apparently a very, very important follow-up question. What do you have for the gentleman?
That's tough on me.
That's how this works.
Well, there's just something really important here, Rand, that we've actually had our crack staff on for. Our producer, Jackson, hasn't slept in 48 hours now because we need to nail down the appropriate nickname, catchphrase, whatever you want to call it, for how you've gone about building this roster. Now, last year, we had the phrase Rand's Bargans, and it didn't really stick.
Nobody had that. You wouldn't shut up about it. It's a terrible phrase.
It was pretty universal. Anyway, Jackson hasn't slept in a couple of days, and so we've got a few to throw at you here. And if you could just pick one, of all the ones I read to you, rapid fire here, if you could just pick one and we can finally settle this.
Yeah, for my sake, Rand, pick one and end this,
or
please,
you can tell
God.
us to go bleep ourselves, and that'd be perfectly acceptable as well.
You wouldn't be the first.
Okay, here we go. We have Rand's Bands, Carthon Cash, Chef Gordon Ramsay, Rand's Ransom, Carthon's Cash Crop, Randa Claus, and Rand's Grand Slams.
My first thought was to go bleep yourself, but one more time. I'm gonna finally do Buck a favor.
Please.
One more time. Let's go through. One more time.
Rand's Bands.
I'll just say no as we go.
Yeah, that's perfect. Process of elimination. Rand's Bands.
Nope.
Carthon Cash.
Nope.
Chef Gordon Ramsay.
That's pretty funny.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I like that one.
We even got you a hat. I mean, we spent some money on the hat, you know?
Rand's Ransom.
Nah.
Carthon's Cash Crop.
Nope.
Randa Claus.
Nah. We'll just go with Chef Gordon Ramsay.
Okay.
That's funny.
Okay.
Everywhere
awesome.
I go, people, this whole let Rand cook moniker is like grown, and it's pretty damn funny. So between people in this building making fun of me because of it, and just being, there's one of our particular fans that sits in the tunnel. I hope he hears this because he knows exactly who he is. Every game that I've been here for, he's let him cook, and so I always know that it's him. And so it's pretty funny. So we'll go with Chef Gordon Ramsay.
Chef Gordon Ramsay. There it is, done and dusted. Rand Carthon, we appreciate your time.
If I get sued, I'm putting this back on the station. So
that's fine. We'll switch it to Rand's Grand Slams if you get sued. Yeah, we'll take it. We'll put it on Buck. It'll come out of Buck's pocket.
Inevitably, I'm going to get pinned for this. So I appreciate that, Rand. Thanks for spending some time with us, buddy.
No problem. Anytime.
That's Rand Carthon, Titans GM, a couple of days after their 53-man roster trim down.
Very important work we've done here.
I'm so mad at you. Last call for phone calls. If you've got them, 615-737-1045 is the number. If you are that fan, by the way, that screams, let him cook at Rand Carthon every time he walks out of the tunnel, identify yourself. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Final segment here on 104.5 The Zone. Not on The Zone, but for us specifically. Thanks to Rand Carthon for jumping on last minute. Appreciate him doing so. Good explanations there on Malik's situation, on Elijah Molden's trade situation, which he was not able to expand on yesterday in the press conference. But that trade has since been made official, so we appreciate it. Should have asked him if he wanted to break any more news while he was here. Did that yesterday during the press conference. Instead, you had to get Chef Gordon Ramsay in.
I regret nothing.
Well, I know. That's the problem. Famously, that's the problem.
The problem is that
there's precious little regret when there should be much regret on this show.
We start to get some great submissions after we've determined Chef Gordon Ramsay. We're not going back. It's just what it is now. The GM himself has confirmed it, but Court on Twitter tweeted us and said, "Make it Ran" somehow was left off the list.
Oh, like make it rain.
Smart guy.
Nobody's ever accused me of that. So, a lot of good stuff there from Rand Carthon. If you missed it, you can check it out in the podcast feed. College football games tonight, like we mentioned, Arkansas and Missouri both in action, both facing, well, North Dakota State for Colorado is not a cupcake. Murray State feels a bit cupcake-ish, maybe a brownie, maybe not quite a cupcake, maybe a cookie cake. I don't know how you view Arkansas Pine Bluff, but there is college football on tonight. And, of course, Tennessee will have to wait until Saturday to see how they manage the situation against UTC coming in to Neyland Stadium. I know a lot of people are fired up to get back into Neyland Stadium, but you've got, Rutgers in action tonight, Wake Forest. Let's see. Is that NC State playing tonight?
NC State is in action tonight. They play Western Carolina, so Tennessee fans can get an early look at their Week 2 opponent in Charlotte. NC State, a top 25 team. One Power 4 versus Power 4 matchup tonight, 7 p.m., North Carolina at Minnesota.
And I see Kansas, Utah also playing games tonight as well for other teams in the AP Top 25. Are you doing high school football tonight?
No, no.
How often are you doing high school football? Because I feel like I saw you do like 3 games.
Fridays from here on out. Yes, My TV 30 does the triple header week 1 every year, and then from there on out, it's just Fridays. I'll be at Riverdale High School tonight. They host Henry County. Will Bowling and Brad Hopkins will be on the Zone. Tomorrow night. Will Bowling and Brad Hopkins will be on the Zone with Brentwood and Brentwood Academy in what should be a really fun game in the Brentwood community.
Okay, then if we don't have anything else, install, we're going to do it today because yesterday was a little hectic with press conferences and later media availability. So if you're looking in your podcast feed for some Greg Cosell analysis of Ernest Jones, you can get that today at 6 p.m. We're going to record that at 2:30 today. So looking forward to getting back in the swing of things with Greg, and then we'll have actual regular season matchups to talk about when next we meet. In fact, no, I guess next week we're going to talk about Chiefs and Ravens because there is one more Wednesday to go before NFL football is actually played. So with that, we'll do some polls.
Polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What's your favorite Titans roster move so far? John says DMR and Thomas Odukoya both making the team. A lot of Titans fans in the replies are going back to the L'Jarius Sneed acquisition in a trade with the Chiefs.
Yeah, we probably should have specified.
Yeah, I meant to this week.
Well, this week there has been a lot of different stuff moving around, and so I thought that we could more hone in on the last couple of days of roster transactions. I really like the Elijah Molden trade because of the salary implications, because it also sets them up to get Ernest Jones and not have to overpay. I like the Ernest Jones deal a lot too, because if he's healthy, and according to Rand Carthon and Jordan Rodrigue, who I think was on the morning show yesterday, knee issues are not anything to be overwhelmingly concerned about. And this is a 25 26-year-old
24. He's 24.
24-year-old player on a rookie deal coming in here. So he must have gotten the league at 20 years old.
Yeah, he's on the last year of his rookie deal. He's due about $3 million this year. And obviously the whole thing with him in L.A. was he wanted an extension. So how that plays out with the Titans remains to be seen, but it's not like they didn't know that when they called about him. So definitely a good player to put into the second level of the defense.
They traded for Ernest Jones first, so I guess I'll say that. But the salary implications that Elijah Molden makes it more viable, I think the Molden trade looks better.
What is Colorado's ceiling this season under Deion Sanders? 47% say bowl game, 38% say 5 wins, 15% are going 7 or more wins.
You know, have you looked at Colorado's schedule recently? Because last year it was vicious.
Yeah, we went over it for that entire segment.
Yeah, I wasn't listening to you, though.
Thank you for listening.
So they open up with North Dakota State. Then you have at Nebraska. The next time, or the first time they'll see a ranked opponent, is hosting Kansas State, and then Arizona the following week at Arizona. So they have a little time to get their stuff together. Baylor, UCF, not. I mean, those should be manageable games.
Will Deshaun Watson ever be good again? 91% say no.
So it's not like running backs, right? Because once running backs start to go, it's tough for them to ever rebound. And so I can't definitively say that Deshaun Watson will never be good again. It would be really, really surprising to see. I mean, will Deshaun Watson ever be as good as he was? I think it's fair to expect that that's not coming back anytime soon. Now watch, this will be an MVP type of campaign for Deshaun Watson, and we'll all have to figure out how to uncomfortably talk about Deshaun Watson as a quarterback and not as a pervert.
$72 million cap hit is tough is it starting next year? That's the cap hit?
The $72 million cap hit is next year.
Thoughts on the new SEC on ESPN theme? 62% say meh. 26% say hate it in all caps. 12% say they love it.
I feel like 26% is always going to hate it. And most people will be like, I'll get used to it.
What is Danny White's biggest accomplishment as the athletic director of Tennessee Athletics? Will says you have to look at the entire athletic department, where it was and where it is today. Yes, the on-field products are better almost across the board, but consider funds, stability, facilities, and we cannot undervalue the way he and the whole admin have stood up to the NCAA. We talked about the hiring of Josh Heupel and the NCAA thing, but the answer probably just is generally stability, because Tennessee has it now, top to bottom in the athletic department. Danny White's a huge reason of that.
You know what I would do for athletic department stability?
It would be terrible things.
It would be wonderful. I can't imagine what your last 20 years have been like.
Yeah, we've been there.
Yep.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Tomorrow, Coach Dave McGinnis is going to be on the radio show. I'm going to see if Ben Jones didn't do anything tomorrow. We'll talk some college football with him since his Bulldogs open up with the Clemson Tigers. Get his thoughts on the Titans as well. So join us tomorrow from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Install tonight. Check it out on the YouTube channel for The Zone, and another episode of Primetime, the last episode of Primetime for the week, tonight at 7. See you guys then.